Welcome to the Eskrima podcast. My name is Jason Inay. I am an Inay and Escrimador, and if you've been following for a little while, there's quite a few now. I have some to release yet from like the Caribbean Expo and everything. So if you're seeing this, you probably want to go back a few if you're interested in some of the things that I've done recently. But today's subject, after you like, comment, and share, if you will, right, is the importance of enforcing self-control and some of the other, what we might call, life skills in martial arts. I remember when I was younger, I had a temper issue. Like, I would lose my temper in class when I was younger. This is probably between the ages of like 8 and 12, maybe 13. And there was, definite concerns, and whether my teacher and teachers, including my father, handled it well, I can't say from the point of view of an adult or a parent looking in, but I know that, I have fairly good self-control when it comes to my own emotional state, right? So the thing about self-control, I mean, it's such an important part of martial arts. It's actually like the first thing I teach now. Like when we teach Eskrima, or if I'm teaching any class or assisting in any class, especially with youth, but also with adults, I teach that the first reason we learn martial arts is self-control. And then the second reason we learn martial arts is self-discipline. And the third reason of many is if you can control yourself and you can discipline yourself, you'll truly be able to defend yourself. And I talk about how, your ability to behave and control yourself under the most difficult of human experiences, right? You're angry, you're afraid, you're excited, and all of these things are mixing together. And they could be in reaction to a real threat or an imagined threat, a real insult or concern, or some kind of imagined insult or concern. And your ability to control yourself and discipline yourself in that situation will determine if you can really defend yourself. But also, that self-control, self-discipline is also so that you don't become the aggressor. You don't become the bully or the criminal or anything like that, right? And in class, I look at that, especially with the youth, as if I have a student that has a constant problem with a sibling or with other students, or just can't get along or whatever, that may be indicative of, a true character flaw. And as I might have mentioned before in a previous episode at some point, the curriculum is actually designed to weed people like that out. Just by the way that the curriculum evolves, and generally people who have a difficulty dealing with criticism, have a difficulty dealing with judgment or anything that would be considered mean or whatever from a biased perspective, right, or perception, right? They'll generally leave if they have to. They don't mind giving the hurt, but they don't want to get the hurt, right? That's always a character flaw, in my opinion. Like, you have to give as much as you get in the training. And since we train for both mental toughness and physical toughness, there is a time and place for all of that, right? And I'm reminded of other, training elements that we have in the curriculum that are designed to essentially weed people out of the training at the higher levels. But the higher levels are very rarely do anybody get to what we would call senior. And the curriculum thus far, as I teach now, is designed around this. So we're not talking about kicks and punches. We're not talking about, Eskrima exclusive. We're talking about more or less martial arts in general, but the United system of Eskrima as the basis for having the conversation, right? And, how important character is in martial arts. How important is it to have good character? And how do we do that, right? what brings this up is I have a young student that attends some of my classes, and he's the youngest of 3 children, and he has a big brother who's the middle child. And they're roughhousing after class, and the youngest bites the elder's brother. Now, I understand that the two had a part to play, but biting is especially in the school, right? And especially your own brother, right? And I'm not talking about like a bite and it hurt, like a bite like it left a mark. Like if I was back in my law enforcement days, you know, something like that, you know, you would definitely get a spit mask put on you, right? That would definitely be aggravated assault, felony assault. That would be a definite problem, right? Especially with the way communicable diseases are today, right? It's a very serious problem, right? Like, so, which is ironic because, like, you know, as part of martial arts, we should be teaching biting, but there's an appropriate way to teach it, and there's appropriate time and place, and that's certainly not roughhousing after class, right? And so I you know, I said I don't like that student anymore in front of a number of students, and, you know, that hurt that child's feelings, which, you know, reminds me. I was at one of my Uncle Dan's seminars that he's hosting, Dr. G. I like Dr. G a lot, actually. I had never met him before. I only knew him by reputation. A lot of people spoke highly of him, which speaks well of a person, right? And then I get to meet him and I get to do a lesson. Content-wise, it wasn't anything particularly like mind-blowing on the content, but he does this thing in the middle of the class where he starts using slurs and insults, and he's insulting women, he's insulting people of different lifestyles and genders and color of skin, and just pretty much any kind of insult you could have, right? And some people got really mad, and I don't think that Dr. G is ever going to be invited back in all likelihood at the seminar. But that was a great lesson, because he goes, if words hurt your feelings, then maybe you shouldn't be doing martial arts. I thought that was a wonderful lesson. You know, it's a lesson that we have within the United System of Eskrima as a main component to one part of the training that we have, but not so elegant or impactful. And we definitely don't do that in public, because people, you know, coming into the school may misunderstand what's happening, right? You know, getting your feelings hurt is part of the training, if you will, as far as psychological training is concerned, because you have to be able to develop yourself in a way where you're not only physically tough but mentally tough. You know, if words are the things that are controlling you, you might have a different problem, because that's also a question of self-control, right? But in any event, mom gets mad. I apologize to mom. I apologize, you know, this is weeks or months later. Apologize to the child, apologize to the siblings, because they didn't know how to take it. But I'm thinking about it after I did it. I'm like, I think it was okay to apologize, but I don't think I did anything wrong. If the lesson is to get that person to correct, and yelling at them and doing those other things have not corrected their behavior, we have to look at it or I look at it from a point of view of behavioral shaping. And I'm, you know, a firm believer of Pavlov's way of teaching in classical conditioning. I think that's useful. That is a very typical way to teach martial arts. Martial arts leverages a lot of what would be called classical conditioning, although not necessarily executed in the greatest effect, right? There still has to be the reward after you ring that bell. So immediate reward's more important, right? That's where that gets tricky. And then operant conditioning, that's B.F. Skinner, right? And so there has to be a consequence for poor behavior, right? And it was interesting too, because the mother, when the incident happened, comes in and immediately starts yelling and blaming everyone else, which, you know, you see this as a problem, or I see this as a problem. There was no there was no effort of investigation. It was more, a storming in an accusation thing, right? Which is like, at the same time is okay. So if exposing someone to a pattern of behavior is a way of imprinting, this is an imprinted behavior now, right? So I personally take the point of view of nurture over nature in terms of behavioral shaping and imprinting. And it's great that these kids have been started from a young age so that they got the latest stage of imprinting, but then they're imprinted by all these other behaviors. And so as an instructor, we're required, and maybe not directly, but we're asked to address the personality and character of the child through the martial arts, because hopefully most of these kids are never going to get in a real fight, as opposed to my student Charlie, who I probably taught from the age of like 8 or 7, and he's 19 now, and he got attacked by a homeless guy, and from behind, and was able to defend against the knife attack, disarm the guy, and push the guy away. I hope that's not the case for every one of my children that I teach over the years, right? But really what we're teaching people is character. In fact, one of my gurus, he had said that the greatest value of his training, what speaks to mental toughness, really. He was saying that he's in a job interview, and he was able to manage the stress of the job interview because of all the stress training that we do physically. And he was able to, add scope to the and perspective. There's this saying in some circles, like, most people operate from their own perception, and it's the people that are higher performers that are able to operate from perspective, not just their own perception and perspective, but others, right? And so my guru Chris, he was saying that I was just able to really level set, if you will, what the true amount of stress was, and move from an emergency sense of feeling of how to deal with the questions and the situation to a sense of maybe urgency or just priority, right? And that's that mental toughness, but that requires subjecting oneself to negative feedback, if not external coming from your teacher, at least internal, right? And being able to be honest with yourself in that way, right? But how we address self-control is, I think, really important. I have an adult student now that I'm working with in terms of their enthusiasm and coming out as a little bit too aggressive in a lot of different ways, not just in a physical way, but just in an interaction level, and having to level set them and talk to them from the point of view of, is this what you're trying to achieve? Because the communication you're doing is X, Y, or Z, and being able to confront that. As an instructor, we have to, you can't threaten people necessarily, other than to kick them out of class, I think, but right, and you certainly shouldn't in most cases use real insults, but there needs to be a way to say, I don't like you, or I don't like this, but also try to build them up too. Sensei Eric Paulson had sent me these guidelines for a good coach, which I personally don't view myself as a coach because I don't teach sports, but I do see myself, and I am an instructor. And there was one about never tear someone down, or never criticize or chastise in public. And I 90% agree with that. But the problem is that you could tell someone on the side, you got to fix this, you got to fix this, you got to fix this, and if that effort doesn't address the behavior in a way where the result is what you're looking for, and you've been targeting the result, and the student is aware of the result that you're looking for, then you might have to publicly do something, right, in order for that, because it may be that because of whatever they've been imprinted at home, or as they grew up, even adults, that certain communication styles just don't work, right? So I wonder what your guys' opinion is on that, because, you know, there has to be a place and time for, like, when a student, adult, and especially a child, and especially an adult, where you're going to have to be very direct with them, and you may have to do it in public. There's another adult that I've had to do that with recently in the last 6 months, where I had to tear him down a little bit in front of class, and then I had to build him up. And the reason why I had to do that is because the behavior wasn't right? And it was dangerous, right? And it's not done. You still have to continue to do those things, because people get caught up in their own, you know, what they're working on. They have a very myopic set of perceptions that don't speak to what everyone else is experiencing in class, right? And as the instructor, you have to be able to use that. And, you know, a teachable moment includes the chastising of another student, right? A teachable moment includes the praise of a student and another student in a public way. Teachable moments are when a child or a student in general is experiencing a challenge and you help them overcome it, or you call it out, right? And trying different ways and escalating, you know, to the point of that is, I think, an important set of tools. And I'm interested in, you know, how other people would deal with that. You know, the thing that I find the most, you know, concerning is when you try to develop a student. You know, I'm trying to get to the point where I'm not kicking the student out, right? Which I've done because it was necessary, right? Especially with adults, right? Because that can be truly dangerous, especially because it's a youth adult class. So you have 13, 14-year-olds in there, you know, high school students and adults in the same class. And you have to be careful. You have to be careful of the rambunctious youth, typically the boys, right? And you have to be careful of the adults in general. And then you have to be careful for those who are feeling more sensitive, right? But at the same time, like I tell my students all the time, this is not a knitting circle, right? This is not a book club. There's going to be risk, right? And I suppose it's understood that may include, you know, emotional risk, right? Usually that comes in the form of adults, their own self-criticism, and usually that's where it was. Especially as they become more advanced, they may experience imposter syndrome and other things. So, you know, it's important for the instructor to have all the tools at hand, including, you know, being mean. If that's the only thing the child responds to or the adult responds to, that's the only tool that you have as an instructor, right? And so I just find it interesting that's socially, and I've noticed it at other schools, socially, you'll put up with behaviors because you want your business to thrive, right? But at the same time, what responsibility do you have as an instructor to teach someone who has no self-control, right? I teach people. Eskrima was used in World War II. I teach people Eskrima. If you want to call it Kali or Arnis, that's fine too. It's used by Special Operations Group. It's one of the, as a genre of martial arts, it's one of the more sought after forms of martial arts that's sought after by LEO and Special Operations Groups in the military, individuals as much as actual entire units, for the purpose of being able to do and perform their mission or their duty, right? And we're teaching this to, you know, regular people because that's what the art belongs to its people, right? At least the Filipino people in terms of Filipino martial arts. But, you know, I believe that martial arts belongs to everyone. Everyone has a right to do it. I'm not obligated to teach everyone, but everyone should have the right to defend themselves and learn to defend themselves and be able to learn techniques that are quite effective, right? But we have to look at that from the point of view of when do we want to use it, and we discuss it. I make jokes like, okay, I'm going to teach you this thing. You're going to go home and use this on your dog now? You're going to use this on your cat? You use this on your grandma? You use this on your dad, your mom, your sister, your brother, right? And we're talking about this because the thing that I'm doing is going to cause great bodily harm. from the point of view of a physical altercation, that could be very serious and come with very serious consequences in terms of the law, wherever you live, right? You can't just rip someone's shoulder out of socket, right? That's not okay, right? But that's what we do in martial arts. I mean, if you look at judo, the ultimate objective of jiu-jitsu, judo, Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo is to throw someone on their head. Yeah, they practice not to do that, but the technique is traditionally, the samurai were not trying to throw people flat on their back, right? They were trying to, they're in the midst of a fight, they have a sword in one hand or in both hands, and if someone comes to grips with them, they use their nagewaza, their throwing, to, get rid of this opponent with the hope that they don't get up, right? And most people look at that as the gentle art. Aikido is not very different if you look at it from its roots of Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, Daitaru, Aiki Jiu-Jitsu. That's, if you get thrown by a Aiki master, not only will you land on your head, but your shoulder, your elbow, and your wrist will probably be fractured in the process, if not your fingers as well. Shui Jiao ain't no different, but they use the leg to do that. These are considered wrestling techniques. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, no different. You're learning how to mangle someone. You're either breaking their arm or their leg, or you're choking them unconscious, right? So these are very, very serious things that we teach in martial arts. And even the kick punch styles, if I kick you in the sternum hard enough, that could be very, very serious. Not just knock the wind out of you, that could be hospital time, right? So we look at that and go, okay, so what's our responsibility? Right? What is our responsibility as instructors in terms of teaching people that have no self-control? And wouldn't we want to have every tool at hand in order to properly train someone, and also have the ability to say that, maybe you need to take a break, or maybe don't come back, right? Those things I think are necessary as well, simply because of the seriousness of the things that we're learning to do. Otherwise, go play football, soccer, badminton, something else, where it's all, cheers and happiness and all that other stuff, and you're not risking, just by doing the technique and losing your temper, a throw. I mean, how much worse would it have been if they had been throwing and practicing throwing instead of, getting stuck in it and biting, and the brother lost his temper through the other brother, Ogoshi, and broke his neck. Totally possible. Anyways, it's something that I think about on occasion, and this is a particular instance that's happened in recent time, and I just wanted to put it out there on the Eskrima podcast of, what we teach is important, what we teach is useful, what we teach is precious. It's a treasure of the culture, and we have a responsibility with whom we impart that skill. The knowledge is not so much, because the knowledge is freely available online. It's more the expertise of what we teach and the implication of having a student without any self-control. I'll see you guys on the training floor.